Hey everybody, this is Zach Weiss from Worn & Wound, and today I'll be taking a look at the neutra Averau 39 moon phase. Say that one 3 times fast. Before getting into it, if you enjoy this review or any of our reviews, please like and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. So watches, when they're in their simplest form, well, they can have one hand, as we've seen from various brands. That's a little bit odd, but 3 hands tends to be the simplest watch: hour, minute, second. When you go beyond that, you get into the world of complications, which is an interesting word when you think about it. Kind of implies complexity. You know, they start useful, a date, it's good to know the date, day, maybe a little less so, month, etc. GMTs when you're traveling. If you really need to know a lot of different times, you can have the world timer. My personal favorite's chronographs. But at that point, you're not getting into the most useful things on Earth. It's really, it's more about, adding value, adding complexity, all these other things. There's another complication that has been around for hundreds of years, perhaps starting on clocks and such, and that's the moon phase. I can't think of a single time I needed to know the phase of the moon. It has absolutely no effect on my life, and yet it's an interesting complication. The style of moon phases tends to be on the kind of fussier side. They have, little smiling golden discs on blue backgrounds floating across a sea of stars, little 5-pointed stars. They're always 5-pointed for some reason. And they tend to lend themselves towards dressier watches, more formal watches, and they can look very elegant. And, like I said, there's something kind of appealing about them because they're sort of poetic. You're looking not at the hours and minutes that you have to kind of guide your day by, but rather at sort of the motion of a celestial body. And it might not affect you, but there's something just appealing about that. So it adds something just sort of otherworldly, sort of outside of yourself to the watch, which is very appealing. But in my experience, at least in my opinion rather, they don't look great on sport watches, or they tend to look kind of forced in there, which brings me to today's watch. Neutra, which is an Italian brand, and if you're wondering what the name means, echo is taken from the auditory phenomena of an echo, which speaks to nature, speaks to adventure, and then Neutra is actually taken from the last name of Richard Neutra, the Austrian-born modernist architect who did a lot of work in Southern California, which speaks towards the brand's design interests and kind of like modernist sensibilities, modern minimal sensibilities, I suppose you would say. So they combine those two in the name. It's a strange name, but that is the idea behind it. So the Averau 39 moon phase, the name Averau actually comes from the tallest mountain in the Dolomite range, and this watch is essentially kind of a sport adventure watch, something they refer to it as a field watch, but it's really kind of its own thing. I think if you look at the design, it's quite appealingly modern, doesn't necessarily fall into any of the kind of design tropes that you see for a field watch, for a pilot's watch, or anything like that. It's it's just kind of a nice adventure watch, and they decided to include a moon phase, but they didn't do so with a little smiling moon going across the dial. Instead, they did it with a kind of a more interesting and technical sort of execution, which you can see at 6 o'clock. I'll get into the details of that later though. But just starting with the watch itself, as a sport watch, 39 by 46 in particular is a great size, nice medium size, wears really, really well. 13.9 is definitely a touch thick, at least on paper, though I didn't find that this case felt very thick, particularly on the wrist, and that's because of how they proportioned it. A lot of the thickness is in the case back, which comes out of the mid case and sort of domes underneath. So they did a good job of sort of hiding that extra thickness there. And that is also measured to the top of a sapphire crystal here. So there is a little bit of a dome. While the case design might not completely blow your mind with its originality, it is extremely well finished, and I think just straight up appealing. So you have a lot of nicely brushed surfaces, the tops of the lugs, the side of the case, polished bevels running along the tops of the lugs, which add some refinement and are just very well executed. There's sharp lines between them all. The bezel has a nice shape to it, has a few facets. Once again, it mixes brushed and polished surfaces, all executed very nicely. And part of what makes this watch so cool, and I actually haven't mentioned yet, is that, it's an automatic moon phase. It's a well executed case. It's got actually a Solita movement in there, which I'll talk about more later. This is under $1,000. So it's just a great value as well. And I think that the finishing on the case is kind of really a great example of sort of how far watch brands have come in the last few years, because I don't think you would have seen this level of fit and finish, frankly, like 5 to 10 years ago, certainly. Just continuing on real quickly, the crown on the right side has a nice knurled finish. It's a screw down crown. It's a little different. I feel like you usually see, kind of thicker teeth. What I like about the knurling though is it grabs your skin kind of nicely, so it's actually quite easy to turn, even though you don't feel it. It's like high grit sandpaper kind of. It just grabs you. Case back is totally solid and features a sort of a stylized drawing of a mountain. I believe that is probably Averau from the Dolomites range. Looking now at the dial is really, it's quite interesting. It's sort of a tool watch dial fit into this more refined case, but I think it has some really appealing qualities to it. When you first look at it, what kind of catches your eye are these large markers at 3, 6, 9, and 12, these cardinal markers. They are loomed blocks that stand up off the dial, and they sort of give the dial a natural sort of orientation. You always know which way is up, and at a glance, they sort of give you the quickest reference point. Between them, you have thin white lines, longer at intervals of 5 / at the hour. At the very outer edge of the dial, which can be a little bit tricky to see, are numerals for the minutes, and those actually rotate with the angle of the dial. And then on the inside of these longer white lines are the hours, and those stand straight up vertically. There's a little bit of a strange clash there that, I don't know, it just sort of throws me off a little bit, that one is angled and one is straight, but that might just be kind of a personal design thing for me. Over here at 3, you have a circular date window. They match the type of the typography on the date disc to the dial, which is always great. Once again, like really, good case finishing. That's not something that was super common a handful of years ago. Now it's great to see that that's just sort of the standard, is to customize the date wheel. Goes a long way towards making the whole watch feel complete. Over on the left side, you have automatic in red and under 12 neutra Averau. Obviously, I haven't gotten to 6 yet, which is where the moon phase is. But one thing I want to point out with this dial is that almost every square millimeter of this thing is in use. There is really no empty space. So I would say they did a good job of balancing it. The weight of the lines is thin. You don't kind of get lost, but it's verging on busy. It's a little, something could have been pulled back a little bit, I do think. But the way they designed the moon phase, I think, was really nice in that it does not actually build on that busyness, which is uncommon for something so complex. So looking down here at 6, you have the moon phase. As you might notice, this isn't the little moon traversing a funny shaped window. You have 2 apertures here, and those apertures are essentially the moons. On the left side, you'll see southern hemisphere with a little arrow pointing up, the right side northern hemisphere pointing down. So you actually see the phase of the moon in either hemisphere. This execution, I think, is a really nice way of doing it that gives it a more technical feel. It doesn't feel fussy. It doesn't feel formal. It feels kind of like a precision instrument. One thing I will say about this design, I don't know if IWC created it, but it is something that is strikingly similar to what you would see on their big Pilot Perpetual. Considering that watch is tens of thousands of dollars and likely inaccessible, I think that there's a nice way of them to use it so that, frankly, that kind of design concept could be utilized in a standard 3-hand watch with a moon phase, of course, and kind of brought down into a more accessible price point. And I think it works really, really well with the design. It's all kind of gray, it's kind of muted. And like I said, it somehow does not distract from the time on this dial, which I think another version of a moon phase might have. Quickly now, just looking at the hands, the hour and minute hand obviously stand out, are quite bold. The minute hand is a straight sword that's about the same width as those plied markers that are around the edge of the dial, and they also all glow this icy blue, so they kind of all feel like one unit. The hour hand is then just like a short little arrow. You cannot mess up these 2 hands. They're very, very clear which one is which, and they point pretty closely to the kind of index that they are meant to be referencing. The second hand is then just a black stick, but it features a little red and white stripe at the end of it. I really like the way that looks. It might draw a little bit more attention to the second hand than it needs, though less so than a full red second hand or something like that, but I think I'd miss it if it wasn't there, so it's a nice design decision. Inside of the neutra Averau 39 moon phase is the Sellita SW280 automatic movement. If you're familiar with Sellita's movements, it's essentially the same as the SW200 or 220, but with the a moon phase on there as well. So it's a 26 joule automatic movement. Like I said, Swiss made. This one's a Averau grade, so it's actually been adjusted a little bit more coming out of the factory for better timekeeping. 28,800 beats per hour. It hacks, has around 40-hour power reserve, all that good stuff. I do want to point one thing out, which is how you use the moon phase. So to set the moon phase, you look up the moon phase online, which is what I did. It'll get a picture of it. You might get a name, waxing, gibbon, waning, something, and potentially a percentage too of like the coverage. But to set it, you just kind of look at that picture and then you just try and match it. So there's a level of imprecision there that I think is kind of funny given people's love of accuracy of watches, and it sort of reinforces, frankly, how unimportant the moon phase is. So with the crown out into second position, you would turn clockwise to set the date, and you turn counterclockwise to move the moon, and it just kind of clicks over, click by click. I don't know how much each click represents, how many days that is, how many percentages that is. Like I said, it's sort of you sort of wing it. It's probably easiest to do on a full moon or on a new moon when it's completely filled in or completely blacked out. But once again, there's just a certain like lack of precision here, and that's not on the Echo Neutra's fault at all. That is just how these movements work, which just kind of I find kind of amusing, especially given, like I said, that precision matters so much to all of us watch fans. On the wrist, the Echo Neutra Averau 39 fits really nicely. It is a 39 millimeter watch after all, by 46 millimeter lug to lug. I don't know if they designed it for reviewers to say that it was a great size, but it certainly is, and I'm quite content with how they sized it. It used to be 39 millimeter watches were rare, now they're quite common, but this is really a sweet spot for my personal tastes and my wrist, which is 7 inches, by the way. Yeah, I just think it fits really well, and it has just a really attractive look. I think we've reached sort of peak vintage homage watch world. I mean, there's still gonna be plenty coming out, but I like to see watches that are trying different things now and trying a little more modern aesthetics. There's something pleasantly familiar about the Echo Neutra without being like a copy of anything. Like I said, sure, that moon phase itself you might see it here and there occasionally, but the rest of the dial I think really is their own thing, and it all works together really nicely. The case itself is really beautifully finished, so you have a nice like robust sporty feel to it, but it's also refined just enough to have a kind of a nice day-to-day feel to it as well. In terms of straps, this black nylon 2-piece strap with a polished buckle. There's some branding kind of in the strap itself. I'll be honest, this one didn't really do it for me. I actually mostly wore the watch on other straps. There are other options. There's a leather strap option, and then there's also a bracelet, and that would just raise the price to $915, which is still a crazy value in my opinion. I'd probably just go for the bracelet just to have it, but this is a 20 millimeter lug on a black dial watch. Anything will look good with this, so I wore it often on this Shadow Crown and Buckle Matte Supreme mill strap, which I just thought had a really cool look to it, but then I also naturally threw it on some rugged leather, and it took to both of them, and I think you could pretty much try any color you wanted with this. It's, like I said, it's a very versatile watch. To wrap things up, when I first heard about this watch, what really actually brought me to it was the fact that it had a moon phase, just because a sporty moon phase, as I said, is a pretty uncommon thing, and I just found that was kind of cool and appealing, and that plus the price point just equaled frankly kind of an original or unique offering on the market right now. But what's won me over about the watch is frankly like everything else. Like I said, the moon phase is sort of useless in a lot of respects. It's fun, but it has no bearing on how I actually use the watch. Half of the time it wasn't even set correctly anyway. But what it is a very nice modern 39 millimeter sort of field watch, sort of explorer watch, sort of adventure watch, and it's very versatile, and I just think they did a great job with it. So I think you could put this up against Christopher Ward's, Hamilton's, Farrer's, things of that kind of which are teetering all around the $800 to $1,000 range. This is just another really good option. And if you want a unique one, you have the moon phase. But Averau also has you covered if you don't want it, because there is a 3-hand version which starts at $630, which is even crazier value, or a sub-dial version, just a sub-seconds version rather, with a manual wound movement that starts at $745. So they really have a version of this watch for everyone out there, should you like it. Thank you for watching the review, and please read the full review right now on wornandwound.com.